Good afternoon, everyone. We'll let everybody get logged in. It looks like a couple of folks are connecting to audio. I think we've got a big group joining us today. So I will ask everyone if you wouldn't mind typing your name and your center or your business name into the chat box, just so that we have that going. We will try and monitor the chat box. So if you have questions, feel free to monitor the chat box, but we'll definitely take questions towards the end of the presentation.
I don't know that. One mute somewhere. Alt A.
Looks like everybody's in here. So welcome, everyone. I appreciate you joining us for our town hall meeting. I thought that we would only be talking about ARPA grants, but it appears that we've had some extra stuff that's come up for us. So we're going to share a few additional pieces of information with you as we move forward today. We'll go ahead and jump to the PowerPoint, and we are recording this just so that you all know. You'll be able to watch it later on, and we'll send a follow-up email with the link and any attachments that we referenced today. All right. So today we've got 5 things to cover for you. The American Rescue Plan Act Child Care Stabilization Grants, VPK tablets and headphones that are going to be purchased for your centers, new state guidance for ECE providers. Most of you received that from either the governor's office, DEL, or perhaps from DCF directly, but we just wanted to make sure that you were all aware of the updated guidance regarding COVID protections. We wanted to talk about a provider survey about starting our vision and hearing screenings again, to get that started with the nurses from Seminole State College. And then the Department of Health has asked us to survey you because they have some resources for you as well. So we'll go over all of those pieces with you today. Right. Okay, so ARPA. You're going to hear it called many, many different things, but American Rescue Plan Act. These are the dollars. The state of Florida received $2.5 billion. About 1.5 is allocated for the stabilization and support grant. Their child care, child care provider. Oops. We'll see if we can get everybody to mute if you're not.
It says something, says Zoom is unable to detect the camera.
I don't know if we can see. Okay. Okay, apologize for that. Just want to make sure everybody can hear. The goals are to stabilize and support early learning providers, expand access to high quality providers, invest in quality, invest in the workforce, strengthen providers. The minimum payment for this grant is $12,000 per provider, and it will be broken up into 3 quarterly payments. Originally, they had talked about this being over a year or a year and a half, but as this process has moved forward, it has turned into 3 quarterly payments at this particular time. I don't know if there will be additional ARPA funding grants in the future. This is the only guidance that we've received at this time, so just want to make everybody aware of that. As funds are utilized and distributed, the state may have unutilized funds and they may go through another opportunity. But for right now, this is what we have for the ARPA grant funds. Jump to the next. Hi, thank you. So who is eligible? So as of this morning, we got some information that clarified some things that I was not aware of as of yesterday. First of all licensed and license exempt child care centers or child care providers are qualified. It includes family home providers, currently open, or if they're closed, it would be closed for reasons related to COVID-19. So a temporary closure is okay if it's temporary related to COVID-19 closure. They have to be licensed, regulated, or registered and met all applicable requirements. And you'll get all of this in writing as well. We're just hitting the highlights today. As of March 11th, 2021, or CCDF, that's the Child Care Development Block Grant, the CCDF fund, eligible at the date of application. And we'll talk about what that means. It means you're eligible to offer school readiness. Even if you're not offering it, you are eligible to offer the school readiness program. To the next one. So this is the surprising part. VPK only providers at public and non-public schools, licensed exempt providers, and school age only programs. VPK programs only at public and non-public schools are not eligible. This I just found out this morning. This is new information because they're not deemed childcare and are not regulated by the state. So you have to have a DCF license or DCF license exemption in order to qualify. So license exempt childcare programs that are registered with the state are eligible. So school age only programs, and I don't think we have a ton of those in Seminole County, but they're not eligible. To be eligible, school age programs have to have an SR contract or be licensed or regulated by DCF. Providers licensed and regulated by DCF with a date after March 11th. So if they're a new provider in the community, so if you just bought a child care center, if you've just built or started a child care center, you're only eligible if you meet the CCDF health and safety requirements. So for us, for those that are school readiness providers, that means the school readiness health and safety checklist inspection. When you become a health and school readiness provider, you're required to have that additional inspection by DCF. We're looking into this, is brand new information first thing this morning. So I would guess any of you that have heard guidance or seen guidance from other coalitions probably have not seen this yet. It's our understanding that DEL will be sending out some revised and updated guidance, but I wanted to make sure that those of you who fall into those categories understand where things lie at this particular point. The next piece. So the first step in this process is that we need to make sure that you have a 2021 Child Care Resource and Referral, CCR&R profile in the provider portal. Because as we receive your application, we have to be able to align your application with our documentation. And the provider profile is where we will be looking to validate some of the information that's on here. We'll also be asking you to keep records and documentation on site, like for everything else, but this is kind of a different type of a grant than we've ever had before. There's more documentation requirements. So we want to make sure everybody's prepared and knows that you have to keep your documentation. But your first step is to make sure that you've completed your CCR&R profile for 21-22. And this is for contracted and non-contracted providers. If you are a child care provider in Seminole County, we want to make sure that you've gone through the profile process. Thanks, Tanya. So every coalition had the opportunity to make their applications go live at a different time. We are using, rather than doing some other type of application process, we're using the EFS mod portal. Since that's a system that we use all the time, DEL has developed the application in the portal, and it will go live for Seminole County providers tomorrow morning. So it might even be midnight tonight. That's usually when they update the portal. So probably at midnight tonight, first thing on the 9th, the application will be available. But I'm going to ask everybody to take a breath and not apply at midnight. I want to make sure that everybody is really prepared and understands all of the ways to maximize the revenue from these grants, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So even though you've waited, I know a couple of nearby coalitions opened a few days before we did. The new information that we got today was kind of a big deal. We want to make sure that we have all the information for you and are not wasting your time as we go through this process. So we're trying to learn as much as we can and be as efficient as we can with sharing this information with you. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So you will receive a detailed frequently asked questions document. We'll email it out as a follow-up. We've got a few highlighted frequently asked questions that DEL has already created. These are not all of them. So if you have additional questions, you'll be able to research that through the FAQ document that we send. But I wanted to make sure that some of these key issues we covered today, first of all, how much you'll receive depends. It depends on several things. The minimum is at least $12,000, but payments are based on the children enrolled in your center. So the first thing that I want everybody to know is our previous grants were based on capacity. That is no longer the case. It is your actual enrollment. So it's the date that you apply that you need to keep records of how many children are enrolled in your center, because your program may be selected for audit. The federal government, the state, or the coalition may have to come in and audit. So you have to make sure that you keep those records. What that also means is you want to make sure if you have a classroom that's closed or you're about to hire a new teacher, you've had children on the waiting list, wait a few days so that you maximize this revenue. We're not going to run out of money. So you don't have to worry about first come, first serve and that the money is going to be gone. We want you to maximize the revenue to your center. So maximize it by making sure that you maximize your enrollment before you apply. Don't rush to get this done and leave money on the table. That doesn't help you at all. And that money just goes back into the big bucket at the state, and we never know if it'll come back to us or not. So we highly recommend that you maximize the revenue. There is a calculator so that you can see all of the different components, and it will send you a link to this, and there's a link actually in this PowerPoint. So we'll jump to the next slide. This is just a brief picture of what it looks like. The link is in here, Provider Services, FloridaEarlyLearning.com, and we'll send that link out to you in the calculator. But this gives you an idea of how many children are enrolled and how much you'll receive. Then how many children 2 years old to kindergarten and how much you'll receive, how many school age and how much you'll receive. And you can see up to 24 months, 2 years to kindergarten, school age enrollment, all of those count. That'll give you your base grant. And then there are several additional requirements that could increase your award amount. So this calculator gives you an idea of how much you would be eligible for. And it's great to use that through your process so that you can maximize, again, the amount of money that you're going to receive. Okay, so we just wanted you to see this. You can play with it. Playing with this calculator and changing numbers doesn't change your application. It just gives you a tool to work from so that you have an idea of what you want to put in your application and what you'll qualify for. Okay, I'm going to jump through. So we mentioned that the FAQ document will be provided. It'll be on our website as well as in the email that we send out to you. If a provider's enrollment is low, would it be wise to delay applying for the subgrant until enrollment increases? Absolutely. If you're expecting your enrollment to increase soon, it would definitely benefit you to wait to apply. It's largely impacted the amount you receive by the number of current enrollments. So some suggestions were if you have a higher enrollment during spring break, use that time frame. If you are, again, have a classroom closed or you're waiting to hire a new qualified teacher and you're in the process to open a new room, wait until you get that classroom open before you apply. Can I use enrollment from last month as opposed to this month? No, you cannot. It is the date of your application that you have to document your enrollment. And please make sure that you are documenting it. You have to have a way to prove that that was your enrollment on that date and time, because again, these are federal funds. So the federal government, the state, and the coalition may select you for auditing these funds, and this is an auditable grant. The other grants in the past, we've said, once we give it to you, those smaller grants, you can spend it as you intended, but we haven't come out to monitor. This grant will be monitored. So I don't want to set anybody up for failure. We want to make sure that you keep all of your documentation, all of your receipts when you spend the money, and everything that you use to determine how much you were eligible for. You need to keep all of that documentation available. And if you delay the application while continuing to increase enrollments, will the funds still be available? Up until June 30th, 2022. So we're opening it March 9th, and up until, we're saying June 15th, but basically June 30th is the end of our contract period, and that's when we'll be stopping applying. So I don't want you to wait until June 30th. We're going to set our deadline at June 15th, but look at your trends and your enrollments. Maybe summertime is higher for you, and maybe you would be better off applying when you've started your summer program. That's something that you could certainly do to maximize your enrollment. So I want to just have everybody thinking about how this will benefit your center in the most possible way. But you will not, we're not going to run out of money. The money is available to all qualified centers, and it's not a first come, first serve type of grant. So maximize it by applying when it's the best for your business. Next. Thank you. Okay, how can you use this money? So eligible providers, you can use the funds for really a wide range of methods. You can use them for personnel costs, staff benefits, sign-on bonuses, recruitment, retention, rent or mortgage payments, facilities, if you had cleaning and sanitation supplies, professional development based on health and safety practices, updating your equipment or supplies, goods and services necessary to maintain or resume childcare services, mental health services for children and staff. Pretty much, there's a lot of listed ways to do this and ways to spend the money to maximize, but you must keep all your receipts. So once you're awarded these dollars and they're distributed to you, we will distribute the dollars in 1/3 increments. So within 30 days of your approved completed application, you'll get your first 1/3 of your award amount, and then quarterly we'll give you the other 2/3 each in a quarterly basis. But you have to keep all of your receipts as you expend them. One thing that I did hear with some of my colleagues when they were asking questions of DEL is that you need to, you don't have to spend all of the money before you get your second 1/3 amount. So if you're in the process of hiring some staff or you're going to be spending some money on training, you don't have to have it all spent before we give you the next amount. You just have to keep all the receipts by the time you've spent all of the dollars. Go to the next piece. Okay, so let me just look quickly here just to see if there are any questions in here before we get to the actual application. I'll see if any of my colleagues have seen anything in here. I know that in some of the guidance that will be sent to you in writing, there are examples that DEL has recommended for how you can document. So what type of receipts, what type of documentation would be required for different types of expenditures. So you'll get some examples of how to document everything that you need to document. Anybody see any other questions? I apologize. We've got a lot of folks joining us. I'm going through.
That's the only question I see, Jennifer.
There was a question about, do VPK providers need to be licensed? I think that needed a little bit of clarity.
Okay, so if you were a VPK only provider, but you're licensed or licensed exempt, meaning you're registered with DCF and essentially regulated by the state of Florida, that would qualify you for this grant. If you were a non-public school that's not regulated at all by DCF, then you would not qualify.
That was my question, because I know that I'm trying to get my VPK certification, and the question was, can you be registered and qualified to be a VPK provider? That was my question. And I kept trying to call it, but I'm not getting any answer anywhere.
Okay, well, we'll have to follow up with you separately because that's a VPK eligibility question.
Okay.
And we'll have to follow up with you. So if you can put your contact information in the chat box, we'll definitely give you a call to follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Okay, so, I'm seeing a couple more questions. Say you have 5 open spots, could you do a special promotion and offer 3-month enrollment? Asking for a friend, you're so funny. Look, as long as folks are enrolled in your center and you have documentation to prove that they're enrolled. Now, let's be honest, if your capacity is 100 kids and you're telling me you've got 300 kids enrolled, that's going to be a little bit of a red flag, right? You're probably not going to be able to serve 300 kids with a capacity of 100. But if you've got open spots and you want to get those spots filled so that you maximize that grant, by all means, take the time to do that so that you can move forward. However, if you are a school readiness provider, you have to collect the parent fee. You cannot waive the parent fee for families on the school readiness program. That is a federal requirement. So be careful about offering a free month of enrollment because that can be a problem for school readiness providers. Okay. If it's a private pay parent, absolutely. You want to offer free services, by all means. Okay, I'm reading questions, I apologize. You have to apply before the end of the contract year, but can continue to receive funds after the contract ends. Correct. As long as you contract with us again next year, or if you choose not to contract with us, but you're eligible, you would still receive this because this grant is for contracted and non-contracted childcare providers. They don't have to have a VPK or a school readiness contract in order to receive this grant. These are federal stabilization funds. Okay. For the total enrollment, it's asking for enrollment for each age, but for SR enrollment, do you put that student twice? Gonna have to look at that one. That's a good question. I think so, because it's asking for your total enrollment, and then it's asking specifically for your school readiness enrollment. So I believe on the application, you would in fact look at that. You would list that child twice.
The reason it asks for the SR calculation is because that calculator will take that into consideration. So it's your total amount, and then of that total amount, how many are SR families?
Mm-hmm. Does part-time count as enrollment? Yes, part-time counts as enrollment, and that's in the FAQ. You'll see that. And is there a time frame for using these funds? I believe it's over the next, because we're distributing it over 3 quarters. So I believe it's over the next fiscal year, but I will verify that and see if it's in the FAQ. And is it enrollment or attendance? It's actually enrollment. If you have children actively enrolled, but you're going to have to demonstrate that they're enrolled. If you have people enrolled that never attend, it would be difficult to validate that those children were enrolled in your center. What if students enrolled for a program but didn't start attending yet? You have to have them in the date that you apply, they have to be enrolled. Good questions. Keep them coming because we're learning through this process, and I'll be real honest with you, we are interpreting this the same way that you are, and we may run into some challenges as we apply and we have unique circumstances. Anything that we're not sure about, we will send to DEL because the last thing we want to do is release funds to someone that wasn't eligible and then we have to ask for it back, or to have you working on this and wasting your time when you're not eligible. We don't want to waste your time. We want this to be beneficial for you all. So we're all working towards that. Religious exempt centers, if you are religious exempt from DCF, you are eligible. Yes. Okay. And again, once you take a look at the full FAQ, you may have additional questions, and we'll talk to you about how to get questions to us as well moving forward. So let's go back to the PowerPoint for a second. The way to apply when you're ready is to actually go into the provider services portal. just like when you do your attendance or you're completing your child care resource and referral, you'll have your logon and your password. I'll jump to the next page. Thanks, Tanya. So as you'll see on the common task menu, it says surveys and grant applications, the ARPA stabilization subgrant application. That's what it's called. So that should show up on your portal by tomorrow morning. We'll also, just to point out to you, we'll be sending out step-by-step instructions. Some of our colleagues in Lake County did a phenomenal job of having a picture of the application with a little bubble that says, this is what you need to put in this blank, and this is what you need to put in this blank. So we're going to send that to you as well, step-by-step instructions that'll help you complete this. It does ask for a lot more information on this application than any of the previous COVID-related grants that we've dealt with. So that's why we're trying to make sure that you have plenty of time and don't rush to get this done, because if there are lots of mistakes, we have to go back and forth, and we want to get this money to you as quickly as possible. As far as the payments, they will be made at designated times determined by DEL and the coalition. They'll be sent within 30 days of completed applications. So once we get your application in and it's approved, we will divide your award amount into thirds. The first 1/3 will be sent within 30 days of your completed application, a completed and approved application. And then the second 1/3 and the third 1/3 will be made on a quarterly basis after that. So as soon as we get through this initial process, we'll set up a timeline so that you'll know when you can expect the second and the third payments to come. We just don't know how long this process is going to take, so I don't want to guarantee you that July 1st you're going to receive the second third, because we need to see how this works. We're kind of making this up as we go along, so we want to make sure that we're managing your expectations. I don't want to promise something we can't deliver. And we'll make these payments directly, just like we pay you for school readiness or VPK, we'll make them directly to your bank account that you provided us with the W-9 and the direct deposit information. Okay. Okay, June 30th, 2022, that's the final deadline. But again, consider waiting to submit your enrollments when they're at their highest between now and June 15th, 2022. Please do not wait until June 30th, 2022, because if we are unable to process it before the end of that business day, if there are errors or anything along those lines, then we may not be able to process that application. So I don't want anybody to miss out. So shoot for June 15th and target it between now and June 15th as the highest enrollment period for your center. You'll be paid per child enrolled on the date that you apply, and we'll send the ARPA this follow-up with all of the frequently asked questions, a paper copy of the step-by-step instructions, or an electronic copy of the step-by-step instructions, and just a reminder to contact your compliance specialist if you have any questions. Basically, the team that's reviewing your CCR&R profile, they will be also reviewing your applications, because it's the same information that we need to look at in your profile and in your application. So we'll work through that. Okay. Right. So an additional piece of information away from ARPA, let's see, maybe I should check on questions here. Do we keep receipts on site or do we upload them? For the time being, we're going to ask you to keep them on site. We will establish, once we know what the monitoring requirements are going to be, we will be establishing a system for you to upload the receipts. We just want to make sure that you keep them. This is just like any of our contractual obligations. You need to keep your receipts for 5 years after the dollars have been received. So I want to make sure that everybody keeps them, and then we will set up a way for you to upload them for us, all of your proof of expenditures, and any other documentation that you might be required to provide. For example, it could be training certificates or something like that if you've purchased training, those kinds of things. But we'll establish that for you. So for right now, if you're spending money immediately, just make sure you're keeping the receipts until we have a system in place. Good question. The question is, are we calling this a sub-grant because there may be more phases, or is this it? I don't know. I'll be really honest with you. It's a sub-grant because the federal government gave it to the state of Florida, who is then sub-granting it to the Early Learning Coalition, who is then granting it to the providers in their communities. But I do not know if there will be more phases or if this is it. I truly do not know. And I'm not sure if DEL knows yet, because we need to see how much is actually expended. All they were able to do was project all of these different categories of the number of school readiness participants, the number of enrollments. And so we can't spend more than the federal government has given the state of Florida. So I think they've tried to get as much of it out as possible, and we'll see if there will be more opportunities in the future. Good question. I wish I had a better answer. Can it be used for payroll, and how would you report it? Yes, you can certainly use it for payroll. And there are some examples, again, in the documents that we'll send you on how to document that you've used it for payroll. You should have reports that go to the IRS for payroll taxes or to the reemployment assistance program. Any of those types of documents will be eligible, and there are a number of them in the examples that we'll send you. Is this a taxable grant? That's a good question. I believe in the FAQ that it is considered program income, correct? Has anybody seen that one? Yeah, thanks, Sari. It is in fact taxable because it's additional revenue, which is different than some of the other grants that we've had in the past. Thank you. And I'm sure you're going to have more questions. We definitely have more questions for the state, and we appreciate your patience as we work through this together. We'll keep communicating and contacting your compliance specialist. You can certainly contact me directly, jgrant@seminoleearlylearning.org. We'll put it in there, but you're welcome to reach out to me directly as well if you have any questions, and we'll work with you through the process. But we're excited to get these dollars out. I think that it will be very helpful to all of you in maintaining services since you've maintained services through all of these difficult times. The VPK tablets and headphones, the state utilized some COVID relief funds. I think it was from the SRSA funds or ESSER funds. There's so many different buckets of money that have come from the federal government. But the state of Florida Division of Early Learning decided to try and address the learning loss that young children have had due to COVID impacts, meaning, kids didn't come to daycare regularly, they had breaks in services, sometimes they were home with parents who were working from home, and there's been some pretty strong documentation that children missed some learning opportunities during that time. And so the state is utilizing some of these COVID relief funds to purchase tablets and headphones. So what this looks like is for each VPK open classroom right now, we are purchasing 2 tablets and 2 headphone sets. Okay, and we can go to the next slide. And they're going to be delivered directly to your center. I don't know when yet. We just placed the order last Friday and Monday morning. So we're working with the vendor. The state identified a vendor, and they're serving the entire state of Florida. So it's probably not going to be tomorrow, but in the next few weeks, we should have some idea of the delivery date, and you will be receiving at your physical address 2 sets per active VPK classroom. So if you have 2 VPK classrooms, you will receive 4 tablets and 4 headsets. And not only is it to assist with COVID-related learning loss, But next year, VPK programs will be required to have a child assessment incorporated as part of the VPK readiness and assessment component. And so as that goes into place, we wanted to make sure that you also had those tools in your classroom available to actually assess. We don't know what assessment tool will be used yet, so I'm not going to give them to you with that software on it, because the state is still in their process of procuring what child assessment tool will be used. In the past, we've used the STAR assessment, and I know for those of you that are on the pilot, the provider pilot, to do the STAR assessment, many of you have been utilizing that tool. We don't know for sure if the STAR assessment tool will still be the same tool or if it will be something new next year. But the state is in the process, and these tablets will help you actually conduct those assessments. So it's twofold. As soon as we know the deadline for the shipping date, we will send out some communication to all of you. And we'll also send you a property transfer form that Division of Early Learning is requiring. It's just a form that you're identifying that you have in fact received the tablets and the headphones, and that you have them in your possession at your center. And if you have any questions about the form that DEL created, you can certainly let me know, but that will be coming out soon, as soon as we know when the deadline is. For those of you that think maybe you're going to open an additional VPK classroom next year, we have ordered some additional VPK tablets that we will have available. Or if you're a new VPK provider and you're just getting started working with us, so you're not on the list yet, we will have tablets available for you as well. So don't think that you're going to miss out if you only have one VPK class, but you're planning to have 2 next year. We'll work with you through that process. We want to make sure you all have the tools to implement the child assessment as efficiently as possible. So we'll be offering training and resources as soon as we know what that tool is. Okay, next. Okay, I don't want to go over this in great detail with you, but I wanted to make sure that you all saw an email that we sent on March 4th this last week, new state guidance for early childhood education providers. We'll just quickly go through this information just so that you have it. The governor's office announced that the Florida Department of Health has updated its guidelines for students to safely return to the classroom by reducing the time a student must isolate after testing positive from 10 days to 5 days. And the guidance is clear that healthy students do not need to quarantine. They'll continue to do everything possible to support parents, keep children healthy, and make sure kids have the ability to learn in the classroom. So that's from the governor's office. We go to the next piece. This just kind of gives you the new child care facilities and providers, the new quarantine guidance. So children who have had COVID-19 exposure or close contact but have no symptoms are not required to quarantine and can remain in the classroom. If a child is symptomatic or positive, they should stay home while symptoms persist, and the child is able to return to the classroom after 5 days have passed since the onset of symptoms, and they're fever-free for at least 24 hours. So similar to some of our other isolation procedures for communicable diseases. After an exposure or a positive COVID-19 diagnosis, a negative test is not required for a child to be able to return to school. Children in a child care facility are not required to wear a mask or face covering. And that's per the governor's guidance and the health department. But certainly centers have the right to establish their own health and safety. If you want more rigorous guidelines, you have the right to do so, but this is coming as the minimum standards. Facilities are encouraged to continue routine cleanliness, cleaning those high traffic areas to minimize transmissibility, and encouraged to practice routine hand washing throughout the day, which in our world, I think they forget that that's a standard practice in our world. But just keep doing what you do to keep kids healthy and safe. Okay. With that being said, that information again came to you on March 4th. So you can check back in your emails. It was an email blast. It also was sent out probably by DCF, but we just wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to receive that information. An additional piece of information that we wanted to share with you is that we would like to start our vision and hearing screenings in childcare centers that we did very successfully with your participation. I guess it's been 2.5 years ago now when we had to stop all of the on-site activities that we did at childcare centers. But as you all know, when children have identified developmental delays, one of the first things that we like to check when screening children is to do a vision and hearing screening to make sure that a child's perhaps a speech delay might be related to hearing loss, or their challenges with doing something else in the classroom might be related to a vision impairment. And so we have had a phenomenal partnership with the Seminole State College Department of Nursing, where they would actually come out to the child care center. You would be responsible for getting parents' permission for the screening, and we would conduct those screenings at your site. And that's for VPK, school readiness, private pay parents. It is a service that we've coordinated to just help make sure that kids are on track and that parents have that resource to make sure they know if their children need to be referred back to a doctor to have their eyes or their vision or their hearing checked. So we will be sending out a survey. We can jump to the next screen. Because we'd like to see who's interested, who wants to do it. If you're comfortable with us starting to have student nurses coming in. And so we'll send out a survey to get things started, but we know that this has been really, really valuable. We also know that there are a lot of young children who were out of childcare for a while. So there may be a couple of years of children that we've missed that perhaps haven't gotten, I mean, even a lot of health practitioners have been doing things virtually and telehealth. So we just want to make sure that kids aren't falling through the cracks and that we can provide you this additional resource to help get kids vision and hearing screened. And at any time, if you have a request for a specific child or if a parent has a request, you can always let us know. We're happy to work with you to assist a family if they're concerned about their child's vision or hearing. So that will be coming your way. Just wanted to give a plug for that project because it's been really, really successful. And your willingness to have the student nurses in your centers has given them really great experience with hands-on with young children. And as nurses in training, that's a really invaluable experience for them to be able to interface with young children directly when a lot of times they talk about pediatric experience, but they don't actually get to interact with children in hospital or other types of settings. So we appreciate your partnership for this. It's a win-win. And then the Department of Health just sent me some information yesterday, and they said they have health-related supplies for COVID-19 mitigation. So they have a variety of supplies available and are trying to figure out if childcare centers would be interested in receiving some of these. So on the next slide, we have a link, and we'll send this out to you as well. This is a survey that goes directly to the Department of Health. And they're trying to reach schools and childcare providers to let them know what they need and share a contact to help coordinate getting supplies out. So they said they have things from everything, some masks and sanitation supplies. They mentioned Band-Aids. You know, I know many of you use those Band-Aids and boo-boo reports. So I would think that if you can get those kind of supplies from the health department and it can help you offset some of your day-to-day costs, then by all means, please reach out to the health department and complete that survey. And again, we'll send this out in a link so that in the PowerPoint that you'll receive from today and in the email follow-up, we'll send you that link. Believe it or not, that's all I have for today. Any additional questions? All right. We will be sending out a follow-up email.
Jennifer, you're mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Not sure how that happened. I did see a question about paying off company debt to stabilize your company. Yes, that is allowable. And you'll see in the frequently asked questions and for the ARPA grant, if you've gone into debt to keep your business running, if you put expenses, day-to-day operations on a credit card, or you use some other type of business loan or something to stabilize your business during COVID-19, then yes, you can utilize ARPA grants, and that'll be in the frequently asked questions. There's some more details on all of the ways that you can spend these dollars. Good question. Thanks, Dave. This is not really a class. This is just an informational session, so we don't give out CEUs for this. It's really just to get everybody up to speed. I did see someone ask about other screenings for developmental delays. Yes, if you would like to know more about our, we do ages and stages questionnaire. The ASQ is the tool that we use for developmental screening to identify if there are potentially any issues going on, and then vision and hearing screening is a part of that process. And then we will also use the BDI to validate if we have any red flags. So we have a whole process. If you have questions about that, I'm looking at my team. Who should I have them call? We want to put a contact in here.
Yeah, Charmaine, if you can put your contact information in there, please.
Thank you. And the minimum age requirement for the screening, I think it's 6 months, isn't it? For vision and hearing screening?
We've been saying 18 months, but if the parents are younger, we can screen them.
Okay, thank you. It's harder to do with the really little ones. I understand. Yes. Thank you, Kalisa. So 18 months, we can successfully do it. If the parents would like it for the younger ones, we can give it a shot. I know the tool is set up for that. It's just a little more difficult for the really little ones. Thank you, Kalisa.
I think it's harder on the college kids sometimes too.
That's true, on the student nurses with the really little ones. Okay. I see a family daycare has 10 total, but there's 13 enrolled due to part-time. Yes, it'll show in the frequently asked questions if you have 10 capacity, but you've got 13 enrolled because they come at different times because they're part-time, you would count 13 enrollments. And you'll see that in the frequently asked questions and in the instructions. Thank you for asking the question again. I'm sorry I wasn't clear. All right. Literacy requirement questions. Are we talking about, I see Lori, you were asking who to call for literacy requirement questions. Is that for the VPK requirements? Okay. I'm going to suggest that you reach out to Lori Butler, L. Butler at SeminoleEarlyLearning.org. Somebody can throw that in there for me. Okay.
I am.
Thanks, Lori. I know a lot of you are still working through that process with the VPQ requirement. So I know everybody has a little bit of a unique circumstance. So there's a lot going on right now. We appreciate your patience and all of the questions that you're asking. And I appreciate you taking the time to walk through the ARPA grant application with us today. My biggest fear was that folks would leave money on the table and rush to get the application in and not maximize the dollars that could come to their centers. So we really do want you to get as much money as you're possibly eligible for. Right.
Jennifer, can we make one mention about the VPK right from the start?
Yes, thanks, Kalisa. Right from the start is our VPK Transition to Kindergarten program. Kalisa has been working diligently to try and reach all of you to make sure. We have these really cute little Bright from the Start cards that some of your colleagues, VPK instructors, and some kindergarten teachers helped us develop. And the information is simply to give a handoff of that VPK child that is now going into kindergarten. If the child is in the school that they're going to go to kindergarten, we understand you do that anyway. But for those of you that are private providers that don't have a kindergarten, you're kind of passing those children off to a kindergarten, and the teacher doesn't know all the great work that you've done with those children and what successes that they've had in their learning in the VPK program year. So this one-page form is a really simple form, but we need you to fill it out, go over it with the parent. It's not a surprise to the parent. Hopefully, if the child is struggling with something, the parents have been made aware of that. And then you give the form back to us, and we will then distribute it to the kindergarten that the child attends. Sometimes people ask us if the child is going to a private kindergarten. I have personally hand-delivered to private kindergartens those transition forms. So it's really our goal to just extend the learning and the relationship that your teacher has built with that child into the kindergarten year, so that we don't, all the work that you've done with that child doesn't get lost. Thanks, Kalisa. Did I miss anything?
Whoops, sorry, I muted myself. So I'm holding up the forms in case anybody, so it's familiar to the people who've filled them out.
Who've done it before.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is part of the law moving forward. The state is actually requiring us to collaborate with the public school district to transition children from VPK into kindergarten. It's part of a law that was passed last year. So it'll continue to be a requirement, and we would really like your teachers to participate in it. Sorry, Kalisa, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I emailed I sent an email the other day. There is a link. You have to fill out a Google Doc that tells me how many, your contact information, and then how many VPK classrooms you have, the teachers' names, and how many boys and girls per classroom. So I do need that Google Doc filled out, comes to me, and then I get the packets together for you all.
Thank you. It might seem a little strange that we have pink and blue cards, but believe it or not, up until we had a VPK program, this transition, the only way that children were assigned to kindergarten classrooms was by looking at how many boys and girls they had, because nobody wanted a whole class of boys or a whole class of girls. And that literally was the information that they had to start to, and now they also would meet with children over the summer and so on. But not every child gets the chance to meet with their kindergarten teacher ahead of time. So filling out these cards and passing on information that you've learned about the children and their successes and any challenges that they face is really valuable to the kindergarten teachers. So we appreciate your participation. Thanks, Kalisa. If you have kids who live in Orange County, fill them out. I'll take them to the Orange County schools. I don't want any kids missing out. So go ahead. We've got enough. You get the forms through an email from Kalisa Assel. When did you send the email, Kalisa?
I believe I sent it, oh goodness. It might have been Thursday or Friday. I'm sorry. I sent it Friday, but it's also coming out in a constant contact. So they need to, click that link and fill out the Google Doc. It will take you through 5 classrooms. So if you have more than 5 VPK classrooms, please fill out another form or just call me and give me the information for the other classrooms. If you only have 1 VPK classroom, just NA 2 through 5, because you'll have to if you don't hit submit at the end, I don't get that information. It doesn't go through. You have to go all the way through the form.
Thank you. All right. Anything else? Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time. Again, I'm going to put my contact information in here as well. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out. And we look forward to working with you to get these ARPA applications and your CCR&R profiles approved. Thanks. Have a great day, everybody.